happening? I hope you're all well. So I'm going to be covering a few fights here, and I'm going to talk about a fight that may be taking place. I've got a few notes here because it's quite a few fights I want to cover. So let's start with Tszyu. He beats Terrell Gausha over a 12-round fight, close, and he was down in the first round. So this has happened before with Tszyu. You know, they both went to throw their straight right hand, both landed their straight right hand, but Tszyu went down. And against Wade Ryan, who is a tough Australian journeyman, he actually went down in the first round against Wade Ryan. So maybe Tszyu is one of those fighters that can be caught cold, and if you catch him early in the fight, he may go down, because he was actually obviously down against Wade Ryan, down against Terrell Gausha, and some fighters like that. I think Derek Chisora is another fighter who potentially can get hurt early and then warm into a fight. So he was hurt against Robert Helenius in the first round when they fought. And many people think that Derek Chisora beat Robert Helenius, but he was hurt in the first round. I saw that as well, I believe. So, but then also against Dillian White in the second fight, he was hurt in the first round by a punch that didn't seem to be the biggest punch. So maybe, you know, Tszyu, Derek Chisora, type of fighters who can be hurt early, but once they get into the fight, they can take the same punches without obviously being as hurt. Either way, first fight in America, I believe, for Tszyu, gets the win. And as a super welterweight, you know, he's in a division that isn't the strongest division. I think he could maybe achieve something in that division and then take that into middleweight, see if that is the route he wants to go. But I believe he can get something done in the super welterweight division. Be interesting to see how he performs at middleweight. I believe isn't Errol Spence. I think Errol Spence. Can't believe I'm even asking this. I think Errol Spence is welter. Yeah, I think Errol Spence is welter, and Sean Porter was welter. Kell Brook welter, all those guys, Keith Thurman welter. So he's not going to get if he's looking to fight in the US and make some money, he's not going to get fights as super welter unless one of those guys are going to move up, and he's not going to get the middleweight money fights, the fights, you know, at middleweight. So is he looking to dominate the super welterweight division, or is he looking to get something done at super welterweight and then move up to middleweight, or even go down to welter? Unless one of these people want to go to super welter to fight him. I mean, I'm trying to think of like fighters who would make some money. You know, he could make money fighting against as a super welter. Any of you know? If I'm not thinking of anything right this second, let me know in the comments section who he could potentially fight in America, an American fighter at super welter. The next one I want to talk about is Marcin Siwy, a heavyweight prospect, 25-0. He beat Rydell Booker, and that was an 8-round fight. And I've watched him once, Marcin Siwy. He's a short heavyweight, 31 years old, has some hand speed, but obviously now, you know, he's a short heavyweight, 31 years old. You know, he's got some hand speed, but I don't think I see anything spectacular from what I saw. Let's see what happens. You know, 25 wins, 12 knockouts, not the biggest puncher, but you know, he doesn't have to be. So let's see what happens with him anyway. He got the win over Rydell Booker. Rydell Booker is an awkward person. Awkward. I actually think Rydell Booker may have even beaten, I think he fought Jermaine Franklin, and I think that he may have even beaten Jermaine Franklin. Jermaine Franklin had, I think, a close fight with Rydell Booker, or, I don't know, a close fight, a controversial fight with Rydell Booker, and a close or controversial fight with Jerry Forrest. So Jermaine, but that's a different thing altogether. Marcin Siwy gets the win over Rydell Booker and moves on. So next one, Mike Perez. Mike Perez is back, and he fought Vasil Ducar and got a 10th round retirement stoppage. Mike Perez is actually a fighter I like. He's very composed, looks very relaxed, and I like his style. And I think he had a close fight against Marius Bradis, and there's no shame in having a close fight with him. Maybe Mike Perez should have a bit more promotion. I know he was with Eddie Hearn at one point. I don't know who he's with now, but maybe he needs a bit more promotion. I mean, I don't know how old he is, just thinking right now. I don't think he's young. He's been around, he's fought Carlos Takam, he got knocked out by Alexander Povetkin. So, I like to see him, obviously he fought in the World Boxing Super Series as well. He lost to Maris Breedis. So, I want to see Mike Perez in there, getting some fights before, obviously, you know, he gets too old. Because I like his style. He's very relaxed, southpaw. So I want to see what he can do. Richard Riakporhe, he beats Deion Jumah by stoppage. Now, Richard Riakporhe, he's a big, strong guy, tall, physically strong. And he's a powerful guy, you know. He seems to have a powerful right hand. I remember watching one of the first boxer shows, I believe, and he was fighting a journeyman opponent, and I think the journeyman opponent actually I think he went the distance, but he got hit with a hard right hand by Riakporhe. And I watched Riakporhe against what's his name, Chris Billam-Smith. That was a close one. So, with this opponent here, he was able to essentially, he had the power to hurt him, you know, and he got knocked down in the 4th round, and with that overhand right, and I believe he got him to the body at the end, because the end looked kind of out of nowhere. He seemed to punch him with a punch, obviously, punch him with a punch. He seemed to punch him with a punch that didn't seem like you would think that would do any damage, and then he just went down and didn't get up. So he's got power, he's physically strong. The issues with Richard Riakporhe, in my opinion, are the speed, the work rate, maybe a little bit lazy. Like, he seems to, I don't know, he seems to switch off sometimes. He sometimes seems to just like go down gears when you wonder why he's like taking his foot off the gas. You wonder why he's slowing down the way that he is, or why is he not finishing this opponent. It's almost like you feel like, I don't know, like he has more than what he's showing. I don't know. Someone else might be able to explain it a bit more. But from what I've seen of Richard Riakporhe, he's a strong guy, a powerful guy, but sometimes he switches off. And he's a cruiserweight, so if he's in there against Maris Breidis, or obviously Usyk's gone up to heavyweight, if he's in there against a cruiserweight with a high work rate, that's not going to be good for him at all. And he does get caught as well. He gets caught by punches. Maybe it's because of the level of opposition. He doesn't feel the threat from the level of opposition. I don't know. But he switches off a bit, and he, you know, he has some stuff to work on. I think he's a little bit slow. Switches off sometimes, and he gets caught. However, he's physically strong and he hits hard, so I like to see, he's an interesting addition to the cruiserweight division. I like to see how he gets on. Who's domestically in the UK at cruiserweight? You got Richard Riakporhe, Chris Billam-Smith. Who's the guy that Chris Billam-Smith fought? McCarthy. I don't know if he's UK. I don't know if he's Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland. But there's McCarthy, who gave Chris Billam-Smith a decent fight. There's so the Chris Billam-Smith rematch could be something to be talked about. The what's that guy's name? I literally just forgot his name. McCarthy. I can't remember his first name. There's that guy. There's who else? Cruiserweight. Trying to think domestically cruiserweight. I can't. Lawrence Okoli. Obviously, Lawrence Okoli. I think he need a few fights before he goes in there, Lawrence Okoli. But he's got that punching power, and Lawrence Okoli, I don't think he's got the best chin, Lawrence Okoli. I think when Lawrence Okoli loses, it will be by knockout, in my opinion. And I think, you know, I reckon when Lawrence Okoli loses, it will be by knockout. But either way, interesting addition to the cruiserweight division. Next one, Dan Aziz beats Reese Cartwright in the 8th round by stoppage. Corner throws in the towel. And, you know, Dan Aziz, strong guy, bit of a unit. And Reese Cartwright was actually a late replacement because I don't know what happened with Matthew Tinker, but he was supposed to go in there against Dan Aziz. And I heard that Matthew Tinker actually brought it to Dan Aziz and beat him convincingly in the amateur, so that would have been an interesting little rematch. But Dan Aziz, he gets the job done against Reese Cartwright, who stepped in as a late replacement. I'm actually pretty impressed with Reese Cartwright, to be fair. That guy was like a middleweight or something, I think, and then he went up and fought Shakan Pitters and gave him a good fight. He might have actually been winning that one. He stepped in. This must have been like a 1 day or 2 day, 3 day notice thing, because I thought that was going to be the Matthew Tinker fight. He steps in there, and he's got some skills. Reese Cartwright can bang a bit, so give him a bit of notice and give that guy a bit of backing. It's not too late to see if Reese Cartwright can get something done, at least domestically, in the light heavyweight division. Moving on, there is Andy Ruiz Jr. So this is a fight that may be coming up. I'm hearing Andy Ruiz Jr. versus Luis Ortiz could be on the cards. Great fight, great fight. Unfortunately, this fight's not happening. It's not happening when I'd want it to happen. I think Ortiz now is showing decline, which is a shame because Luis Ortiz, you know, was he ever in his prime as a pro? Because how old is he? I don't know how old he is. He could be in his 50s. Let's just be real. He could be in his 50s. Either way, Ortiz was better 2015, 2016. So 17, you know, he was better back then. So, you know, I would have preferred to see Luis Ortiz when he was a bit younger versus Andy Ruiz Jr. And it is what it is, though, you know. Andy Ruiz Jr. is a low out. He's not someone who will lead, Andy Ruiz Jr. He waits for you to throw in any counters you. So, Luis Ortiz being a savvy southpaw, I actually see this, you know, Luis Ortiz counter-puncher, Andy Ruiz Jr. counter-puncher. Who's going to lead? Who's going to lead off? How is Andy Ruiz Jr. going to handle a southpaw? You know, I can't remember the last time I saw Andy Ruiz Jr. versus a southpaw. So, interesting stuff, interesting stuff. If I was to pick right now, I would say Andy Ruiz Jr. I think Luis Ortiz is the technically superior fighter. I think Luis Ortiz may punch a bit harder than Andy Ruiz Jr. as well. However, Andy Ruiz Jr. has got that hand speed, probably overwhelm Luis Ortiz, I can see that. So, a good fight either way. And the last thing I want to mention, is Nkosi Solomon. Some of you may remember Eddie Hearn, you know, had Nkosi Solomon on his stable, former Matchroom fighter, and he was meant to be a highly talented amateur who I don't know if he won the Golden Gloves or something. He was meant to go on and do good things as a heavyweight, and then he went and lost his pro debut against a journeyman called Matt Cameron with a record, I think, of 2 wins, 1 loss and 1 draw, or something like that. Was down twice in that fight and deducted the point for holding. But then he subsequently went on and won, I think, like 4 fights on the spin, something like that, or 4 or 5 fights on the spin, 3 of them being like first round knockouts. But then he actually is no longer with Eddie Hearn, because Eddie Hearn apparently, Eddie Hearn said that he failed a drugs test, and Eddie Hearn said he's no longer working with him, which is a bit, you know, I don't know what to think of that, because Eddie Hearn was talking about Canelo and how Canelo's a cheat, and then he went and worked with him. You know, he went and said that Dillian White, the B sample, I still don't know what happened with that. And then, you know, other fighters, you know, there's Eddie Hearn, I don't know what to make of the fact that he's prepared to work with Canelo, for example, when he's getting rid of Nkosi Solomon. Obviously, I know Nkosi Solomon's not is known as Canelo and whatever. I'm just saying. Anyway, Nkosi Solomon's just lost a fight last Thursday against a guy called, what's his name? Emilio Salas, a 37-year-old with a record of 6 wins, 3 losses and 1 draw. So it's not looking good for Nkosi Solomon. Is Nkosi Solomon going to become a journeyman now? What's going on with him? From what I've seen of Nkosi Solomon, he has the fundamentals, but a bit slow. Doesn't know when to do things in the ring. But there is something to work with. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on with Nkosi Solomon. It looks like a long road back anyway. But either way, that's my boxing report for this week. And I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of the topics I talked about in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next video.